Ducks don't speed by Sparty this time. Does the Pac-12 take a hit? UCLA versus the Miracle Worker. That would be Mr. Tanner Mangum. USC looks dominant, but who wouldn't? Looking at the competition the first 2 weeks, is the Pac-12 really 3-4 against the other Power 5 leagues? Has the ascent plateaued? We'll talk about that as well. This is Pac-12 Breakdown every Wednesday night at 11 Eastern. It's 8 Pacific time, and it's the best Pac-12 talk out there. I am Mark Rogers of MarkRogersTV, and I bring in the best bloggers that I can possibly think of talking some Pac-12 football. So that means Mr. Don King from Last Word on Sports. We've got Jack Follman from Pacific Takes and Mike W.R. from Gojo Bruin to talk up the Pac-12. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I'm good.
Great, Mark.
So
Good
this
evening.
league, I still think it's the second best. No worse than that, but the results haven't followed thus far. It's a small sample. We'll see what happens thus far, but we're at that point where most of the big non-conference games are history. There's still a few out there. So, of course, Michigan State, Oregon, the big one out there last weekend. Sparty took care of business at home. I don't think the outcome really shocked anyone. Michigan State a 3-point favorite, won by 3. Well-played football game. Oregon certainly showed that while Adams isn't able to execute the offense in the speed and fashion that Mariota, nobody expected that, and he still showed that he's an exceptional athlete and should be a great quarterback this season. Don, let's start with you in regards to your thoughts about the Oregon performance and the reflection on the Pac-12.
Yeah, I thought Oregon showed up and played really, really well. In my polling last week, I actually moved Michigan State up to number 3 nationally, and I think they are right there. That is an outstanding football team. They're really good, and Oregon showed up and gave them all they wanted and almost found a way to convert their chances down the stretch into a win, which would have been impressive for Oregon and would have been great for the conference. Didn't quite happen, but that's the way it goes. You know, the other thing it reminds us of is that teams play these games, conferences don't. And on that day in East Lansing, Michigan State was 3 points better than Oregon. I thought the game reflected it. I thought it was a very high-quality college football game for week 2 of a young season, and it was very entertaining. And I thought 2 of the best 10 teams in the country played, and the home team that was slightly better on that day prevailed.
We'll see what
nothing less.
I'm sorry, Don. We'll see what Michigan State's able to do with Ohio State on down the road, but this is most likely the most important non-conference game, if not the most impressive non-conference game that's going to be on this year's slate. Jack, has your perception of Oregon changed after the Michigan State game?
Not really. That was a good comparison with that Dawn kind of laid out. My top 25, I had, going into the game, I had Oregon 5, Michigan State 6, and I honestly just swapped them after the game. I mean, both teams were kind of what you thought they were going to be. The only thing I kind of would think would maybe hurt Oregon is just that obviously later down the road in the playoff race, they probably can't lose another game now. But I think overall with the Pac-12, Oregon showed up to represent the Pac-12, played well. Did they play outstanding? I don't think so. Did they show a little bit of the faults that we're not going to see this? We're going to see this year as opposed to last year. Yeah, but they did everything they could to put themselves in a chance to win that game, but they just couldn't pull it off in the end. You can't knock anyone for that. They're pretty much what I expected to see.
Jack, you're a man after my own heart. A guy that says, that's the top 25. I'm doing my own top 25. This is my top 25. I love that. I think that's great. And if I would stay at the grindstone, I would do that myself. I just complain about the other top 25 is what I do. Okay, Mike, anything with Oregon or anybody in the Pac-12 in regards to what stands out to you last weekend?
Well, definitely Oregon. It was interesting to see the Ducks kind of, how can I say this, improve their defense from the first week because of the score right here against Eastern Washington. They allowed an FCS team to score 42 points on them. That's an Oregon Ducks team that allowed another team to score 42 points on them. That doesn't happen. They corrected that. Obviously both teams played really tough. The Michigan State defense is just, outstanding. It was just an overall great game. It was what I expected. The offense on both teams took over early. It seemed like they couldn't be stopped, and then second quarter, the defense steps up, and just a back and forth affair. Although the one thing that I was worried about with Vernon Adams was if he was going to have enough chemistry with this team. And there are a few flaws that I saw. He had interceptions, and one of the I don't know if it was in the game or afterwards. I think it was on the Pac-12 network where I heard someone say. You don't see a lot of interceptions with Mariota, and that was one of the things. Mariota was there for 3 years, and all of a sudden, you have this new guy who it's a plug-and-play system, but for the most part, you can know the offense, you can know how to run it. If you're a running quarterback in that system, more power to you. But it's the little things that really count, and I think that might have, if Vernon Adams had played a few more years, or maybe if Mariota had one more year of eligibility, I have a feeling the Oregon might have rolled over Michigan State, but that's a big if. This is 2015. They have the teams that they have, and I like the game. The only thing I didn't really like, seeing as how the SEC, had a lot of losses. Kind of disappointing games this weekend. To have Oregon fall all the way to number 13, I think was a bit much because it was 3 points against a top 10 team. If anything, they should have maybe, Oregon should have dropped maybe 1 or 2 spots. Notre Dame almost lost to Virginia. They went up a spot. Auburn, almost losing, and they dropped 12 spots. So I'm like, why not Oregon? They're a darn good team, representing the Pac-12 very well in that game. So that was the only thing. That irked me was the fact that they dropped that many spots. They're still a damn good team, and they're going to come back. This one loss against a top 10 team is not really going to hurt them unless they lose more games. But that's yet to be seen still. But that's the only thing I'm taking away from this game.
Like you, I shake my head at that rationale. If, let's say, I'm just throwing out rankings, the number 15 team in the country goes to the number 5 team, and there's like 2 plays separating these 2 teams, and the number 15 team in the country drops in the rankings. Well, isn't that what we're expecting when the 15th ranked team has to go on the road to play the 5th ranked team, and they played that well?
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw this out before we move on to other matters concerning when you look at Oregon and you look at how this may play out, and things will probably get a little bit more crazy than this, but if they win out, let's say they win them all, Michigan State wins them all, drops the game at Ohio State, as everyone would anticipate, but let's say it's a great game. They play great. They only lose 21-20. They don't make it to the Big Ten championship game, but they're sitting there at 11-1. And Oregon's 12-1, having won the Pac-12. Wow. And you've got the immediate comparison between the 2 teams. But it was a 3-point loss on the road, and Vegas tells us 3 points to the home team. You could almost call it a tie on a neutral field, theoretically. That would be interesting, Don.
Yeah, that's going to challenge the committee. And they keep saying that one of their lead criteria is conference championships. And under that scenario, with a 3-point loss on the road in week 2 with a quarterback with a broken finger, if they then run the table, win one of the Power 5 conferences, strength of schedule is going to be off the charts, having played 9 in-conference games and that road game against Michigan State. I think Oregon would get the nod. Now, should they? Maybe not. You could argue that the head-to-head should matter more, but that is not what the committee has told us. They've been saying they prioritize the conference championships. That would put that message and that theory to the test. We'd have to see how they would handle that.
Hey, Jack, trying to take off the Pac-12 blinders. Which direction do you go in that scenario?
I think it would go Oregon because I was looking at Michigan State's schedule, and other than that Ohio State game, I don't know if they have another game against a ranked team. Whereas if Oregon runs that table, they're going to have to beat USC maybe twice or maybe a UCLA, and there's going to have to beat some other Pac-12 teams that are in the ranked. And at the same time, I don't see very many Big Ten teams that are going to sneak back into the top 25. Maybe Wisconsin, but I don't know if Michigan State actually even plays them this year. So that did play out. I think even with the head-to-head Michigan State win, given the circumstances of the close game at home at Michigan State, I think you would probably go with Oregon for the better body of work. because Michigan State might end up with only that win over Oregon as their only big win of the season.
Yeah, Michigan State actually plays Purdue and Nebraska out of the Western Division, so Nebraska a chance to sneak into the top 25. They're 1-1 right now. All right, let's spin it ahead to this week. USC and Stanford. The Trojans have gained much for playing the two opponents that they have. People are extremely impressed, and I know that the scores have been out of control, and they have just played picture-perfect football, but I got to see them on a field with an actual competitive natured team. So, Mike, let's start with you in talking about whether it's USC, whether it's your beloved Bruins taking on UCLA. Let's just spin this ahead to this week's competition because we've got a number of intriguing games. Again, headlined by either USC-Stanford in the conference or UCLA taking on what's become the darlings of the college football world because of this Tanner Mangum pulling off two just amazing plays against, let's see, it was Boise State and it was Nebraska the week before.
Mm-hmm. The USC-Stanford game is very intriguing. You know, after that first Stanford game, it seemed like this would be a bloodletting for USC. It just seemed like how could Stanford fall from grace? But then, you know, I don't know what happened in that first game. But you know, Northwestern is actually proving to be a good team. They got ranked this week. Doesn't mean a whole lot right now, but you can see that Stanford actually had some talent that they were playing. They weren't just playing some cellar dweller, Big Ten team, and it looked a little bit better for Stanford this past week. But at the same time, with teams like Stanford and USC, you can never really count any team out. One, it's the start of conference season, so both of them are going to be going hard. Number two, Stanford and USC, they don't like each other, so that's just going to be great. And three, these teams match up pretty well against each other, so it's not like a spread going against a power. It's kind of like a power versus a power, and that's kind of what was exciting and boring about last year's game. I think we're going to have more of the same, but I honestly I can't call this game right now. I just kind of want to see it. Stanford just looks improved. I'm interested in seeing how the Stanford defensive front, the defensive line, goes up against the USC offensive line, which in week 1 they gave up 5 sacks to Arkansas State. Not an FCS school, but not in a Power 5 conference. So that's going to be interesting to see. USC had improved offensive line work this week, so there are just so many questions that are going to be answered this week. I can't even come up with the words just because it's just going to be a great game. It's a great way to kick off the conference season. As far as wasn't it? Help me out here. Mangum, what was his first name?
Tanner Mangum.
Tanner
Yes.
Mangum. I was talking about his name last night. I mean, that's just a fantastic name. He could do so many things with that. Tanner Mangum, Utah Vice, something like that, whatever. But he's surprised a little bit. He surprised me, after Taysom Hill went down, just coming out and, slinging the ball and winning 2 games in a row. For UCLA, they need to not let that happen. They need to make sure that their defense puts BYU in a position to where they cannot make last-ditch efforts. Secondly, I'm actually looking forward to this game as a defensive battle as well because BYU is going to be the toughest team UCLA has played so far. UCLA is going to be the toughest team BYU has played, so that has just all sorts of excitement right there. It's going to be at the Rose Bowl, and it's UCLA has a little bit of revenge on their mind because the last time they played was 59-0. Bad score. So both teams different. Obviously, that was, I can't even remember how many years ago that was, but both are completely different teams. So this is going to be a really interesting game. I think UCLA pulls it out. I predicted UCLA to win big in the first 2 weeks. I don't think they're going to win big this week, but I think they are going to win.
Mike, it's pretty simple. If UCLA's up by less than a touchdown and there is any time on the clock and Tanner Mangum comes onto the field, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You need to be on your knees if that's the situation.
D lineman out in coverage,
Funny.
Hey, Jack, this changes by the week in terms of where we think the power structure is in any league almost in the country outside of Columbus, Ohio, but just about any other league. Here in the Pac-12, the power structure seems to be right there in Los Angeles with the Bruins and the Trojans, but they both play their first difficult opponent this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I've kind of been waiting to see when that true, power central is going to take hold in LA and kind of leave the Oregon-Stanford territory it was for a while. And I think this finally might be the year, and I think if it will, we're going to find out a little bit about that this weekend. USC, someone who's followed Sark a lot when he was at Washington, one thing Sark really did is when he's supposed to blow someone out, they blow them out. So I don't think they've really proven anything yet with those 2 wins. And this is going to be a big test. Stanford, I think he has a lot of he's got a lot of fire in him to try to not only put behind him what happened the week before the season, but also his distaste for Stanford from during his time at Washington. I think if he's going to have his team ready, and I'm not that sold on Stanford this year yet. I mean, they bounced back and they beat UCF by a lot, but UCF's really bad. I just have a hard time believing that if Stanford's offense is as bad as it looked in the first game, I don't see them having a chance of winning this kind of game against a team like USC that's going to force Stanford to put an A+ game out there on defense to hold them to 21 points. I just don't see Stanford putting up enough offense that they really need to win this game. Can they make it competitive? Yeah, but I'm a little bit worried for them, especially if it starts to get a little bit out of hand. Over to UCLA versus BYU. This is maybe just as interesting to me because I think UCLA has the most complete, deepest, most experienced roster on the in the conference this year, but quarterback was that only question coming in, and so far there's no reason to question that quarterback position anymore. But I think we'll find out a lot this week. BYU is a nasty team. If you may have seen that cheap shot video that was going around this week, I think it was against Boise State. They're going to really want to get after Josh Rosen. I mean, this is not a defense that you want to play as a freshman quarterback, so it's going to be on the UCLA offensive line to protect them, and just looking at the matchup, I think they will. UCLA's got too much depth, too much talent across the board everywhere to make them lose this game and to make BYU put too much of a challenge into UCLA, but it's going to be a test, but I still think UCLA is probably comfortable enough to win by a couple touchdowns.
So fortunately, we've got the right guy to talk to about the Stanford game plan. And Jack, you mentioned an A+ effort. So what does that formula look like, Don, for Stanford in going to Los Angeles?
Well, let me take these 2 games in reverse order, though, so I can really sink my teeth into the USC-Stanford match. I am more bullish on UCLA against BYU than either of these gentlemen, which frankly surprises me a little bit. I actually think they are going to blow the Cougars out. I think Rosen is legit and the real deal. They've still got a stud running back. I think the defense is good, and Miles Jack, particularly with Scooby right sideline, is the best defensive player in the conference right now. I think BYU is in a world of hurt. God bless them for getting those 2 wins, and for Mangum for getting his moment in the sun and all the interviews he's earned. Good for him. I think they're going to get slobber-knockered this Saturday, and I don't think it's really going to be that much fun to watch. So on to USC-Stanford, and Jack hit on it, and this is exactly right. Which Stanford offense is going to show up, I have no idea. And frankly, neither does anybody else. The offense looked much better against Central Florida, but if you watch that whole game, you would realize the offense still was pretty awful for a quarter and a half. And, it finally came to life, woke up, midway through the second quarter at home. So that's 5.5 quarters into the season with very little offensive production, and the UCF defense is absolutely not the Southern Cal defense. Nowhere near the kind of size on the front, nowhere near the kind of speed on the back end. So it's going to be a real challenge, and it is going to be about the game plan, and it's going to be about execution, and I have no way of predicting, how well the Stanford offense is going to be able to perform. Now, here's what I do think will happen. The Stanford defense is going to show up, and the game is going to be hard fought. And if the offense can avoid turnovers, big mistakes, deep in negative territory, and grind some clock, short passing game, I think it's going to be a different kind of ball control offense than you've seen in the Toby Gerhardt, Stephon Taylor days, more the short passing game and athletes out in space. If Stanford can win the time of possession battle, I think this is a one-score game at the end. If Stanford's offense sputters and the third down conversions are not there, like at Northwestern, it could get out of hand by the end of the second quarter. So as much as I would like to believe, frankly, I'm just not in a position where I feel like I can yet. Haven't seen enough consistency to feel great about this matchup coming in. I think USC is finally fully stocked, and has the kind of depth that it's been lacking the last 3, 4, 5 years in this rivalry. And they're at home, and they're going to be loaded for bear and ready to play. Sark will be fired up too. Now, the flip side is I don't think Shaw likes Sark very much either. So if there's one coach in the nation that could get Shaw to really, amp up the playbook and empty his chamber into an opponent, it might be Steve Sarkisian. I just think there's a little something there between the two of them, even though I don't think you would ever hear either one of them admit it publicly. So we'll see. And in SC, it is a rivalry game. So people outside of California should not get it twisted. These teams don't like each other, historically have not liked each other. Outside of Cal and possibly Notre Dame, USC is Stanford's biggest long-standing rival, even though it wasn't much of a rivalry, until the last 5, 6, 7 years or so when Harbaugh showed up, because it was so lopsided prior to that. But it's a rivalry game. Emotion's going to be high. Ton of Stanford players from Southern California that are going to want to perform well in front of family and friends in the Coliseum. If I were a betting man, I would say that this is probably a USC game, but by a single possession. I don't think they covered the 10-point spread that I saw published somewhere earlier today.
Hey, Don, let's keep it right there with you, because those are the two marquee games we've been all over here. But it's a sneaky good week in the Pac-12. You've got Cal at Texas.
Yep.
Now, Texas is a mess right now from a structural standpoint, organizational standpoint, but they probably still have substantially better athletes for the entire roster than Cal, but Cal can sling it. NFL quarterback. Texas is going to either have to put pressure on Goff or stick to those receivers, because they're going to complete passes. The passing game is just proficient at Cal. You got Utah State at Washington. We know what we've talked about, the Aggies and the good game that they played against Utah and how they pushed the Power 5 team. So those are really the two that stand out for me. Colorado State's always, you talk about in-state rivalries. That's right up there as well. So anything else that stands out to you?
Yeah, I think Cal handles Texas, and I think they handle them fairly easily. And the irony of this Texas team that Strong is known for defense, and we have not seen that at all. The defense was awful against Notre Dame, and Cal brings a better quarterback in, healthy, some of the best wide receivers in the nation. A very dramatically underrated running back in Daniel Lasco, at least in my opinion. And Cal's defense has been playing better as well. I think Cal goes into Austin and really handles Texas and handles them fairly easily. It's a big game, relatively high profile, and I think the Golden Bears want to show what they can do. So on to some of the other ones. I think Utah State's going to give UW all they want, and I haven't decided if that would be a game I'll publish in my picks that come out in the next day or two. I'll have to think long and hard about that one, though, because I'll tell you, the moxie that Chucky Keaton and Utah State showed last week in Salt Lake City, tells me that they're every bit as good as Washington and could go up there, up to Seattle and take it to them. So we'll see what happens there. And in a bit of a reversal, I like what I've seen early in the season out of Colorado. I know they went out to Hawaii and took that long trip and weren't able to close the deal there. Got a win last week. And I think they're going to handle Colorado State in Denver. I think the Buffs get the win.
Colorado State coming off a pretty impressive game against Minnesota, lost in overtime after the Golden Gophers, of course, gave TCU quite a game at 23-16. So, Jack, what catches your eye this weekend?
As you pointed out, those are three really good underrated games this week that are kind of below the surface of the marquee USC-Stanford matchup. Cal-Texas is a game that, on paper, I want to pick Cal to roll in that game, but I just don't trust that program yet. So I kind of feel bad about it, because if you took away the names of the two teams and probably show me their rosters and show me what they've done this year, I'd probably pick Cal in a landslide. But I just don't trust them yet. This is kind of that gain trust game for me for Cal. If they do what they should do, then I'm fully on board. I think Cal wins 7-8 games this year. But I just kind of have a feeling about them that I don't know yet. Utah State, Washington, the more I think about it, the more this is a game that I think is going to be very tough for Washington and going to be a big proving ground for Chris Peterson.
Yep.
This is a big game for him. He can't, in his second year after a really disappointing first year, coming out 1-2 with 2 losses to Mountain West teams, that's going to be really tough. So I think he's going to be really a lot of pressure on him in this game. And while I do like Utah State's chances to keep it close, following Washington pretty closely, they usually play teams that kind of like to grind it out pretty well. I think in recent history, I think you'd see that when a much more talented, experienced Stanford team, they played them pretty well the past few years. Those kind of grinded out teams, Washington usually does really well against them. It's those high flying, up tempo teams that generally give them trouble. So I still think Washington can hopefully pull that out in a close one at least. Yeah, and like the last game, Colorado State. I'll admit I haven't seen a ton of Colorado this year. They've kind of had a weird game time schedule, so I don't know a ton about them. But this is another game that I think is huge for the coach.
Yep.
Same exact situation, I guess. Now that I think about it, Mike McIntyre can't afford to start 1-2 with 2 losses to Mountain West teams, including a big rivalry game. Colorado State, same thing as Utah State, too. Very, very, very tough team. I saw what they did against Minnesota, who's another coincidentally underrated tough team.
Agree.
So I don't really know what it's going to be able to do. They kind of showed a lot of improvement, I thought, last year, especially on offense. But so far this year in the Hawaii game, I didn't like what I saw on paper, admitting that I haven't seen them play live yet. But yeah, I'd probably have to say Colorado State in a close one would kind of be my my bet. But I wouldn't be shocked if Colorado also turned the corner and put it to Colorado State a little bit too.
So Don, you mentioned that you need to release your picks. Have you made your picks yet?
I know how I'm leaning on several of the games, and all the ones that we've touched on. I need to go think about and do some numerical study on that Utah State Washington one, and frankly, I may leave it alone. It scares me.
We can give you a break here. Jack and Mike, you guys ready to make pick predictions here? We don't have to. But,
yeah, I'm good.
Oh yeah.
You guys need to make some picks. Mike, before we get this started, anybody with UCLA this week that we need to see for the first time? Meaning, Bruins have played 2 off-the-radar games. Is there anybody that we don't know about right now that could jump out in this nationally televised game?
One guy, and he's probably going to be used in the second half, or he might be bumped up to second string because of his performances in the first 2 games, is running back Bolu Oluwafemi, who is just a wrecking ball. We kind of knew he was going to be a decent running back, and everything was surrounding Soso Jamabo, and he's been all right, but Bolu is just a bowling ball, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. So watch out for him in the backfield. But the other thing that really surprised me, and I want to look a little, I'm going to check out a little bit closer on this game, is with defensive tackle Eddie Vanderdoes out, UCLA cycled in 3 D linemen, Elianku, Matt Dickerson, and Jacob Toyota Mariner, who did a very, very good job holding up that empty spot for Vanderdoes. But going against BYU, that's going to be the real test. Now, if Kenny Clark, the nose tackle, can do most of his business, he was not exactly a non-factor, but going against a team like UNLV and blowing them out, he didn't have to do much. Takaris McKinley on the other side didn't have to do much. This game, they're going to be called on a lot, and it's going to be expected for those three guys that I named, Anku, Dickerson, and Toyota Mariner, to step up and really, really put the pressure on the BYU O-line. So, Bolu Olorunfunmi and those three defensive linemen are the guys that, you should definitely keep an eye out for.
If you guys haven't noticed, that's always one of my go-to questions, one of my favorite questions for you guys, because I want to know who are the guys that I don't know about right now who are ready to break through and explode. Yep. So I go to the experts for that because I want to keep track of everybody. So, Mike, let's stay with you and let's go run through these games. We got New Mexico State going to Arizona State on Friday night.
Arizona State has a lot to prove with that first loss. I think they're going to win easily, maybe by 30 points. Let's say 33-3.
Oh, we're giving scores here.
Oh, I thought just predictions. Okay, never mind. Well, that'll be easier just for the prediction.
Well, for those folks that want to play the line, this may be vital information. Georgia State taking on Oregon.
Oh, that's Georgia State is. They're getting paid, so they're going to get paid to get embarrassed. So not embarrassed, but it's another punching bag team. Georgia State went after Washington last year, and Washington took it to them. That's going to be all Oregon, big time.
Yeah, since Jack is the keeper of our picks, I'm just doing this for the official capacity of making sure we get all the picks in. But yes, we could assume Oregon's going to beat Georgia State. All right, Utah State taking on Washington.
Ooh, that's going to be tough. I'm going to give Washington the benefit of the doubt. I think Chris Peterson is a good enough coach to where he's going to be prepared for this. If he's not, then he's going to shock me because I thought he did really good in that Boise State game. But right now it's still up in the air. He's still getting his culture going, so it's. That's just a tough one. I mean, that's a lower-tiered game, but it's going to be one of the more interesting ones for the Pac-12. I'm going to give Washington the win on that one. Okay,
we got the Buffs and the Rams. Colorado State.
Colorado State took it to Colorado last year in Denver. I like what Colorado did last week, so I'm going to go with. I'm going to back the pack and go with Colorado on that one.
Okay.
Buffs.
Sonny Dykes and Cal taking on Texas.
That's going to be all Cal, I think. I just think Cal has fantastic quarterback, great receivers, defense. Jury's still out, but I think Cal's offense is going to do a number on Texas, so that's a Cal win.
Okay, we've got San Jose State taking on Oregon State.
I'm still iffy about Oregon State. I have a feeling it's going to be another close game, and there's going to be a San Jose State team. San Jose State win. So.
Okay. One for the Spartans. Okay, Wyoming, Washington State, and Pullman.
I just don't trust Washington State, but I'm going to give them the win. At home, away, neutral, you just can't, be certain with Washington State. But I'm going to give Washington State the win.
Yeah, that's a bad Wyoming team.
They're bad.
They're awful.
Utah and Fresno.
Oh, Utah. I mean, the only interesting thing about this is seeing how Utah plays outside of the state of Utah. They haven't been really good outside the state the last 2 years. 2 years ago, I don't think they even won outside of their state. But, I mean, Fresno State, as talking about horrible games, they gave up 73 points to Mississippi. And they lost, they won to, FCS school that I can't even pronounce. I don't even, remember who it was, but Fresno State has dropped a bit in the last couple of years, so that's all Utah.
Okay, I'm going to guess that you're taking Arizona over Northern Arizona.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Arizona, they're injury plagued, big, a lot of injuries on defense, but I think they still have enough talent on the offensive side to do more damage than they will on the defense. So I'm going with the Wildcats.
Okay, Jack, for time purposes, we'll tee it up by saying I'm going to assume a number of these games, and if
Okay.
I get it wrong, you can jump in and tell me, hey, I'm taking New Mexico State to beat Arizona State. But otherwise,
Nope.
we're gonna assume a lot of favorites here. We'll dive
Yeah.
right into the good games. Utah State at Washington.
If the more I think about it, the more I say Utah State, but my gut still says Washington, so I'm going to go with my gut.
Okay, we got the Battle of Colorado, Rams and Buffs.
Colorado State, they've proven more to me than Colorado, and they usually play really well in that game.
Okay, I'm intrigued by this one, Cal at Texas.
I'm sticking by what I said earlier. I just don't trust Cal. I hope I'm wrong, and Cal wins this game by 30. As in, from then on, I'll be comfortable picking Cal, but until they do that, I'm going to go Texas.
Okay, we focus on the City of Angels, Stanford at USC.
I'm going to go USC. I'd be pretty surprised if Stanford finds the way to win this one.
Okay, finally, Tanner Mangum and the Cougars at UCLA.
UCLA. BYU might be able to hang for a little while, but they don't have the athletes this year that UCLA does.
Good stuff. All right, because it may not last for another week, Jack, we need to let everyone know who's leading the picks right now.
Oh, no. I believe that might be you.
You believe
Mark
correctly,
Rogers.
or I
Yeah,
wouldn't bring it up.
Oh,
I'll give you that one. I think it's 20, 19, and 18 out of 24 for our big leaderboard. So, it's a tight margin right now. Yeah.
pretty good.
Again, I disclaim that because it may be completely different and I may not recover after this week, so I need to get it out there while I can. All right, Don, let's tee it up with Washington hosting Utah State.
Yeah, give me UW. I do think
right.
it's close, though. I think Utah State's going to give them a tough time. I think Chucky Keaton is still sore, though. So give me Washington.
Okay, we got Colorado State.
I'm taking the Buffs. I'm with Mike. I'm going to back the pack. I'm taking the Buffs in that one.
And I believe you said Cal all over Texas.
Absolutely. I don't like where Texas is right now at all.
Okay, we got two biggies here in Los Angeles. We got BYU at UCLA. You love the Bruins.
Yep, like UCLA big, and I think I think Southern Cal by a bit.
Okay, close to your heart, but you're going with the Trojans.
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I really do, but I haven't seen enough to trust it yet.
I bring on professionals. This proves it. Going against his beloved Cardinal, taking USC to win this one. It's Jack Follman from Pacific Takes. It's Donald King from Last Word on Sports. And, of course, Mike at WR from Gojo Bruin talking Pac-12 football every Wednesday. Got to be here, 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. We stream live, but then we also have it available for you, video podcast on YouTube at my channel, and then also the podcast, the audio version at Podbean. This is the Pac-12 Breakdown, and we will be back with plenty to talk about next week. Gentlemen, thanks so much.
Thanks, you, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Mark.